Hey, this is Leo for Actualized.org. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about how to become enlightened, the exact step-by-step process. This is a very advanced video, which is something I have to say right off the bat. If this is your first time hearing about enlightenment, then this video is not for you. Go watch my introductory videos first. There's a bunch of them that you should watch. This is an advanced video which will guide you from going from the point of learning about what enlightenment is and kind of getting curious about it to actually getting down to the nuts and bolts of what do you do to become enlightened, like practically speaking. And I'm going to try to cut out as much bullshit and mysticism as I can from this process, because there tends to be a lot of it when you start reading and studying and researching this stuff. So what are we really talking about here with enlightenment? Let's refresh our memory. Well, there's an interesting and very peculiar fact about your awareness. And this fact is that you are not an entity sitting inside your body. That is not who you really are. But it sure really seems like you are an entity that's sitting inside your body. That's how you perceive the world. It's been that way for you since the moment you can remember living life. And your entire life is centered around this idea that you're an entity at the center of life who's experiencing it. Well, this turns out to be false. It's just factually false. And what your true nature is, your true existential absolute nature, is something that's very fascinating and in fact cannot be communicated through language. But we can try, and many people have said many things on this topic, but basically the consensus is that you are everything within the field of awareness. You are the field of awareness itself. And this entire field of awareness is couched in nothingness. And so absolutely, you are that. Nothing. This is like an existential, metaphysical nothing. Now, immediately we have some traps here that we're already starting to get caught in. And this is the trap of taking anything that I say here as a philosophy, taking enlightenment as a philosophy. It is not that. This is not philosophy. We are not interested about what you believe or what other people believe or what I believe or what some scriptures told you or what some expert told you or what science told you or what your religion told you. None of that. Not interested in it here. What we're after here is going underneath the beliefs, which is something that you've never really done in your life before. And yet, your mind tells you that you have. So you see, immediately we have a very big problem because in just starting this process, already there's many false assumptions within you. So we have to navigate around this. There are many traps here that we have to avoid. And I'll be pointing them out as we go. The objective here in this episode is to get you a process that will allow you to attain enlightenment fast as humanly possible. When you start studying and researching enlightenment, one of the things that becomes apparent to you is that many people have been on this journey towards enlightenment for decades, 20, 40 years, and they haven't become enlightened. So when you read about this and you hear about this, immediately you start to say to yourself, well, I don't want to be like that. So what do I have to do to make it happen now, in a year or two, let's say, rather than in 20 years or in 40 years? Well, the last 12 months of my life, I've really spent studying different schools of thinking on enlightenment, different techniques and processes that are available. I haven't studied them all, but I've looked at a good number of them, and there's a lot of consensus between them. And what I've done is I've tried to find the methods that work the fastest. And so the method I'm going to give you here is going to be a very, very direct method, extremely direct. And it's very rare that you hear such a direct method. So if you want to do it fast, and I'm talking about doing it within 3 to 24 months, you can do that if you're really dedicated and you work hard and you follow the guidelines that I give you. You can do it in 3 to 24 months, which might sound like, oh man, that's still a lot of work. Yes, it's a ton of work. Enlightenment is a ton of work, but it's a lot less work than 20 years or 40 years. Also, in case you're wondering, a question comes up about meditation. People wonder, well, is meditation used to attain enlightenment? Shouldn't I just be meditating? Is that going to be sufficient? And the answer is, in a nutshell, no, that's not sufficient. Meditation is great for calming the monkey chatter in the mind. It's also possible to use meditation to attain enlightenment, but that process usually takes 20 to 40 years of everyday meditating for half an hour to an hour, right? So it's a process and it works, but it's a very, very long-term process, which most of you don't have the patience for. I recommend that you do keep meditating as you do what I call enlightenment work, the process that I show you here. But it's not sufficient. It's not direct enough. Meditation is just the starting point. Really, to attain enlightenment, you need a very, very focused inquiry into your own consciousness, and that's what we're going to describe here. I spent the last 12 months working with an enlightened guide and studying lots of other enlightened people who have come up with different processes, and I've been kind of putting and piecing all of them together to find the thing that is the quickest and has the least bullshit to it. The process is simple, which I'm going to show you. It's a very, very simple process. The difficulty is in the many, many traps and ego deceptions that are going to be happening as you try to apply this process. So I'm going to explain this process right now, and then I'm going to spend some time talking about the different traps and making some key distinctions that you're going to need to apply this process successfully. Because don't get confused by the simplicity of it. All right, there's so much depth here. This is the deepest topic that I've ever discovered in my entire life is enlightenment. It's the deepest and most challenging topic that there is, I think, for the human mind to grapple with. So here's the process. And actually, there's some bad news. The bad news is that actually there cannot be a process for becoming enlightened. The mind wants to look for a process, but actually enlightenment itself is not a process. It's a state of being. It's not a state, just so you understand, it's not an emotional state. That's not what I mean when I say a state of being. I mean reality, right? We're living in reality. There is a reality here. Are you aware of it right now? So whatever you call reality, that entire thing is you. You are it. You are reality. You're not a piece of it. You're not an observer of it. You're not someone who's inside of it. You are the whole of it. So to become enlightened, what you need to do is you need to become reality itself right now in the present moment. As soon as that happens, enlightenment happens. But there cannot be a process to get there because it's already happening. Every second of your life, you might say that you're being it. The problem is that you're not aware of it. So what we need to do is we need to raise your awareness to a sufficiently high level where you simply become what you already are but don't know that you are. And how does this actually happen? Well, a very tricky thing here. And this is something that took me a long time, many months to accept, is that enlightenment happens basically by spontaneous luck. You cannot control it, really. Why not? Because what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is the truth of no self. meaning that there is no such thing as the entity that you personally think and believe that you are right now listening to me. This thing I'm pointing at right here, it's not a real entity. That's a fiction. So that being the case, and you wanting to become enlightened, can you see the problem here of you trying to become enlightened? There's no one to become enlightened. That is enlightenment, is realizing that there's no one to become enlightened. Sometimes in the Eastern traditions, they call this passing through the Gateless Gate. Very paradoxical. The most paradoxical, perhaps, thing that you'll discover in life is this thing here. But nevertheless, even though there's not really a process for being you, because you already are you already are reality, you're just not aware of it. So there's no real process for it. You just have to do it now. Right this second, you have to become it. But how do we actually get you there practically? Well, there's a little bit of a process. Here it is. First thing you do is you sit down. Sit down in a very quiet place with no distractions. Get a timer. Set the timer for 30 to 60 minutes. That's what I recommend to start with. Sit upright in a meditative-like posture. You don't need to be overly formal about it, but if your back is upright, that's helpful so you don't fall asleep. When you're doing this, you want to be as mentally clear and alert as humanly possible. So ideally, don't do this before, not before, but after a meal, for example, or right before bed, because you're going to be sleepy or tired and your mind's not going to be able to focus. We need your mind to focus like it's never focused before in its life. So here's what you do. You're sitting, right? You're all prepared. Your timer's rolling. Now what you do is you can close your eyes if you'd like, or you can keep them open if you like. Both methods work. And then what you do is you go inside, so to speak, inside your awareness, and you look, and you try to get an accurate, real-time, present sense of what you believe you really are. So one thing you notice if you start meditating is that there's like a sense inside of you of you. Like when I say, hey, you over there, you, I'm pointing at you, you are registering that. And you're saying in your mind something like, oh, he's talking to me. Oh, that's right. Yeah, me, I. That's what you is pointing to. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, that sense. Now, what you need to do is you need to get a real time in the present moment sense of that, because that sense is shifting around and it's moving. Maybe it's an idea in your mind. Maybe it's an image. Maybe it's a sound. Maybe it's a label. Maybe it's the word I. Maybe it's the word me. Maybe it's you or whatever. Maybe it's your name. So you get an accurate sense of that right now in the present moment. And this is very different than just a belief about you or something that you've been told, like, oh, well, you know, my science teacher in 6th grade told me that I'm the brain and that my consciousness is coming out of neurons firing in the brain. No, that's a story that someone told you. Forget about that. You need to focus on what's going on right now in the present moment, because reality is happening right now in the present moment. Reality is not back in 6th grade science class. That happened 20 years ago. Forget about that. Right now, who do you think you are? Who do you feel you are the most honestly? Like honestly, who do you feel you are? Because you have a very firm sense of yourself. Because if I tell you that you aren't real, what happens in your awareness is that immediately you jump to the fact that, no, wait a minute, Leo, I'm right here. So we need to capture that. You need to kind of like latch onto it with your awareness. All right? So you get that. And then you start looking around in your awareness. What's going on in there? And you try to distill your sense of self to the most accurate thing you can pinpoint. And you try to be specific about it. Because here's the problem, is when I start talking about you and pointing to you, and you close your eyes and you go in there and you try to find, where's me? Where's me? Where am I? Is that me? Is this me? Who's me? When you start doing that, you start to notice that a lot of the things that you think you are, you actually aren't. So the first thing you'll say is like, well, I'm the body. But then you go in there and you look and you're like, well, wait a minute. Do I really believe I'm the body? I mean, it seems like I believe I'm the body, but then when I go and look a little deeper, it's like, well, but like the sensations in my feet, I don't really believe that that's me. I mean, there's certain sensations in the feet, and I believe the feet belong to me, okay, but it's like I'm the one who's perceiving the feet. I'm the one that they belong to. I'm not actually the feet. I'm the owner of the feet. Interesting, okay, I didn't maybe realize that before, okay. So then I look deeper and deeper and deeper, and eventually as you keep doing this, and you'll do this over the course of weeks and months and perhaps years, depending on how astute you are with your awareness, you'll start to see that actually what you really believe that you are is not a body or a brain or any other kind of stuff like that, but what you most believe you are is a perceiver. You believe that you are like this point behind the eyes, between the ears back there somewhere, on which all of these sensations here are converging. That's what you really believe. But it's not enough that you just hear me and take me at my word. You have to actually go inside yourself and actually find that. But if you do the work, you'll start to see that what I'm saying is true for you. Once you get that sense of, oh, I'm that spot back there somewhere, try to pinpoint it. Because see, this is where people start to get very vague. And they start to wave their hands and say, oh, well, Leo, yeah, I mean, I'm somewhere back there, or, whatever, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. No, you have to be very accurate. What actually are you in your present experience as it's happening right now? What are you? And you ask yourself a couple of key questions. First question is, who is aware? So you're doing this process and then you ask yourself, who's aware? I'm aware. Who's aware that I'm aware? Who's aware of the I? Who's aware of these words? Who's aware of these images? Who's aware? Really good question. Second question is, who is perceiving? So you'll notice if you close your eyes and you sit there that you believe that you're perceiving stuff. Sounds, sensations, feelings in the body, and so forth. Well, when you're doing that, ask yourself, who is perceiving? Is there actually an entity in my experience who is perceiving experience? And you sit and you wonder, and you look for an answer. And the third question you can ask yourself is, who am I? This is a classic question. The problem with this question is that, for the first 6 months of this work or so, this question didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know what the question was really asking. So it takes work for you to even get to the point where you understand what the question is really asking. So you might want to start with the other two questions. But eventually you can get to the question of, who am I? And again, you close your eyes or maybe keep them open and you just look, who am I really? Like really, who am I? And that's the whole process, basically. And what you're doing is you're looking for an answer, except you're not looking for a logical answer. So the answer to these questions is not going to be something like, oh, well, I'm a spot behind the eyes somewhere, or I'm the body. You're looking for an experience of your true existential being. What are you metaphysically as an entity? Right now, you most likely believe that metaphysically what you are is you're composed of atoms and that you're a body and that you're a brain, and that's what you are. Maybe you also believe that you're a spirit or a soul of some kind. Doesn't matter which, both of those things are stories and just beliefs. And both of those are false too. So those are not what your true nature actually is. But it's very difficult for your mind to even open to the possibility that that could be false. So what's going to happen is that you're looking for the answer. You're trying to become the thing that you actually are. You're trying to become aware of it. And becoming aware of it is not the same thing as thinking or philosophizing about it. That's not what you're supposed to be doing here. If you're philosophizing, you've lost it. You're off track. What's going to happen is that the voice will come up for you. I call it the voice. The voice is that internal dialogue in your mind that you identify yourself with. So one of the other beliefs you have is that you are the voice. All the thoughts you think and have, you think that those thoughts are you. What's going to happen when you ask yourself, who am I, or who's perceiving, or who's aware? Immediately the voice will kick in and it'll supply a ready-made logical answer. And it'll say something like, well, Leo, don't be stupid. Here I am. I'm the body. It's stupid to even think otherwise. Or a million other variations on that theme. Here's the problem, is that the voice is not actually you. You're falsely identified with it. So what we need you to do is to actually become aware of that fact. So when the voice kicks in, what I want you to do is I want you to go meta on the voice. So the voice will kick in and it'll say something, Leo, I'm me, or something like, hey, this is here, this is me right here. What are you, stupid? Here I am. The most obvious thing ever. I'm me right here. When you get that answer, I want you to recognize that that's an answer of the voice. And you need to ask yourself, who is perceiving that answer? And what this does is this takes you up one level. This is called going meta. So the voice says, I'm the body. You say, who's aware of the body? The voice says, I am the body and I'm self-aware. And you ask yourself again, who's aware of that answer? And the voice will respond, well, of course I am. And you'll say, well, who's aware of that? Who's perceiving that? And you're going to play this game. What it is actually is that it's the voice talking to itself. It's absurd what you're doing, really, because there's not a you and a voice. You are the voice, but that's all false. That's all the illusion. But you need to get a direct experience of this, right? So you're going to be sitting down on a daily basis and you're going to be practicing this, what I'm telling you, asking yourself these questions. And you're going to be carefully looking. And you're not going to be thinking or philosophizing, but you're going to be very carefully observing, just objectively observing what's going on in there. And what you need to do as you're doing this, you need to keep a very open mind. The problem here is that you need to open your mind to the fact that you actually don't know who you are. And this is very hard to do because you believe so firmly that you do know who you are. Your entire life is predicated on the fact that you know exactly who you are. But actually, the fact is that you have no idea who you really are. And it's not going to be possible for you to even practice this work towards moving towards enlightenment until you open your mind to the possibility that you don't know. And this is very hard to do. You have to do it right now in direct experience. It's not enough for you just to agree with me and say, yeah, Leo, maybe I don't know. Not enough. You have to actually not know. And there's different techniques we can use to open up your mind. So one that I really like is this one. Notice right now in your direct awareness, you're conscious, right? Stuff is happening around you. There's sensations. You're seeing me, you're hearing me, and other things around you. You're feeling sensations in your body, right? Notice that everything that you're perceiving is arriving at nowhere. Right now, notice this. Everything that is being perceived by quote unquote you think is you think you is the point to which this stuff is arriving to. Like you think that these sights and sounds are converging on a point, which is you. But can you notice right now that there actually is no point to which these things arrive at? Right now, do it in your awareness. Kind of freaky, huh? Where are these perceptions coming from, and where are they going to? Who are they going to? You might say, well, they're going to the body, or the thing inside the body, like the soul. But notice that whatever you perceive as the perception's going to, that's just another perception. Can you see this? So whatever you answer as the thing that all these perceptions are converging towards, that's another perception. That's not the perceiver. Can you see that? Can you see that in your awareness, there is no perception of the perceiver? If you believe that what you are is a perceiver, which is what you believe, then what do you really know about yourself? Because everything you perceive is not the perceiver and is not actually you. So then, who are you? What are you? Are you saying that you're a perception? No, you probably don't want to say that. You probably want to insist that you're the perceiver. But all you have are perceptions. Do you see this? Do you see that there is no perception of a perceiver? Any perception of a perceiver is a perception, not the perceiver. Good. If you need time, pause and actually do this in real time for yourself right now. It doesn't help to believe me. It doesn't help to agree with me. In fact, it hurts. You're not going to become enlightened that way. So this process, this little technique here is designed to create genuine wonder within you. Like, oh, maybe there's something awry here. Like, I've been walking around and living and breathing and thinking that I got this shit handled, but maybe there's like a glitch in the matrix and I just saw it. And now my mind is open, just a little crack is open in the mind. Now you can actually run the process, and now you have a chance of actually progressing in this work. See how tricky this is? If you just sit there with a closed mind and you ask yourself these questions, you could sit for 50 years and you'll get nowhere. So you got to open your mind. And as you do that, your mind opens, and then you look inside and you try to be aware of, okay, who am I? Who's perceiving? And you look for evidence of the perceiver. You need to find that evidence in your direct experience. What do the raw facts of the situation show right now? Forget about what people have told you. Doesn't matter. Forget everything that I told you. Forget about that too. You have to ground this in your direct experience. And as you're doing all this, a very important point is that you have to intend to become your true self. There needs to be an intention here to actually make a quantum leap. Because right now you think you're a perceiver, which is actually not what you are. You are being itself. You are reality being itself. But it doesn't help for you to know that or to believe it. That doesn't help. In fact, it hurts. So the reason I tell you this is that I want you to understand that you need to make a quantum leap between where you are now and where you're going to be to become enlightened. So this is the leap from thinking that you're a perceiver of reality to becoming all of reality itself. Can you see the quantum leap there? This is like two whole fucking worlds apart. So to do this, basically you have to sit there and you have to have a steel determination to make the quantum leap happen. Like you have to want it really fucking bad. Like you have to really want with every fiber of your being to make that jump. If you lose that intent, you're not doing the process and you'll get nowhere. And it's very easy to lose intent. Because what will happen is that your mind will wander. So in this process, basically, you're focusing in on the most real sense of you, and then you're really opening up and you're wondering, and you're asking yourself this question, let's say, who's perceiving or who's aware, and you're kind of intending to make that quantum leap. And what will happen is that your mind will wander off your sense of you, and it'll start thinking about lunch. It'll start thinking about how stupid this whole thing is. It'll start thinking about your car and your email and tomorrow night and your girlfriend and your boyfriend, all this stuff. Your mind will wander around. And the hardest part of this entire process I found for me is refocusing your mind always back to the subject. And the subject is always you. So what is your most real sense of you? You have to refocus on that over and over and over again. Every second of your sitting, if you're sitting there for 30 to 60 minutes, you have to keep refocusing, and you have to notice when you've wandered off and then bring yourself back. This is the hardest thing. You're going to fail thousands of times at this. You're going to get lost in stories and ideas and fantasies, and you're going to fall asleep and this and this and that. And every time you do that, you're getting nowhere. You need to have a direct experience of who you really think you are, and then you need to ask questions of that to become aware of who you really are. And every time your mind supplies a ready-made logical answer, you need to remind yourself that this is the voice, and that the voice is simply sounds and images. And that sounds and images are not actually you. You don't believe that now anyways. You believe that you're the perceiver of sounds and images. So again, who are you if you're not a sound or an image? That's the process. There's a lot of subtlety and nuance in this process, and there's a lot of places you can go wrong, which I've already underlined for you a little bit, but it's going to be worth it for you to go back to this part of the video and rewatch it dozens of times as you're practicing this on a daily basis, because there's a lot that I said that you're going to miss on first or second or even third hearings. You're going to need to build up awareness before you really understand what I'm talking about here. Okay. So how do you practice this? You go and you do this on a daily basis. I recommend doing 30 or 60 minutes of this every single day, like clockwork, like a meditation habit, except this is much more focused than meditation. I like to call this process looking, which actually brings me to two very important distinctions that you need to make in your awareness if you're going to use this process successfully. And the first distinction is the distinction between thinking versus looking. The thing that you're very familiar with is thinking. You're real good at that. In fact, you're so good at it that you think that thinking is all that there is. Well, there's also perceptions for you. So you think that what the world consists in is perceptions and then thoughts. And you think that your way of interacting with the world is basically by thinking about it and seeing it and perceiving it. But there's also another thing, which is awareness. And the distinction between thinking versus looking is the distinction between thinking and applying awareness, pure awareness to a situation, which is observation. And when I say looking, I'm not saying with your eyes, although you could look with your eyes, but I'm saying like with your awareness, with your consciousness. Have you ever wondered what thoughts actually are? I mean, you think them nonstop, thousands of them in a day, maybe 10 or more thousand a day. But have you ever stopped and wondered, like, wait a minute, what the fuck is a thought? Existentially, what is it? I mean, is it made of matter? Out of energy? Is it a spiritual thing? What is a thought? Don't be so quick to think you know. It's a very tricky question. You could spend months practicing, looking to find what the answer is, and you'll still fail. Thoughts are very tricky things. Here's what you got to know about thoughts. A thought is a sensation, so to speak, and it also contains content, or what I call a story. How do we best explain this? I like using the movie analogy. Imagine that you're watching a movie. You're in the theater, you're watching a movie, and let's say you see Tom Cruise getting punched in the face. Okay, so you're watching that. Now, what are you actually watching? Are you actually watching Tom Cruise get punched in the face? Or are you watching light projected onto a flat white surface, like a wall? What is a movie actually? Is a movie actually Tom Cruise getting punched in the face? We would say no. Maybe that happened and that was filmed, but that's not what I'm watching. What I'm watching is light flickering on a wall. Okay, so if that's true, also notice that when you're sitting there and watching the movie, you're completely engrossed in the movie. So much so that you have no idea at all, no consciousness in the moment that this is light flickering on a screen. In fact, when Tom Cruise gets punched in the face, what do? You kind of like, you flinch, or you react, or like you gasp, or you laugh, or whatever the intended, emotion is that the movie wanted you to feel. But basically, you're totally absorbed in what I call the content or the story of the movie. And you're not aware of what the movie actually is. And so what happens is that you literally get sucked in and lost in the fiction. Very curious. A thought is analogous to this. A thought has both a reality to it, and then also it has the content or the story that sucks you in. And the whole problem with life is that everyone is walking around and living life completely sucked in to their fictitious thought stories, rather than seeing what's actually going on existentially inside their mind. So I want to demonstrate this for you right now, and I want you to make this distinction in your direct experience right now. So go ahead and close your eyes. And now with your eyes closed, just relax. And what I'd like you to do is keep them closed until I tell you to open them. So they're closed now. I'd like you to think of $1 million in your bank account. You got that? A thought of $1 million in your bank account. Now, you got a picture of it or a word or a mental label, something like that. That's a thought. So keep that thought in your mind. Keep it alive. Now here's a question. Is that reality? Is there actually $1 million in your bank account? And of course, the answer is no. That's a thought which says there's $1 million, but there's not really. So it's a fiction. Okay, good. So that's, obvious. Keep your eyes still closed. Keep thinking of that $1 million. Now, the question that's even more interesting is, does the experience of $1 million in your bank account, does that have a reality to it of its own? Like, what is that? It's not actually $1 million in your bank account, but it is something, right? You are aware of something. A thought does have substance. It has a certain feel to it, a certain sensation, certain color, or certain sound, or whatever, right? That's the actual reality of the thought. That's kind of what the thought existentially is. So draw the distinction right now between what a thought actually is and what it's pretending to be with its content. You see how that works? This is a very critical distinction if you're going to try to become enlightened. This is the whole problem of why you're not enlightened already. Do you realize how significant this is? This one distinction. This is huge. Because if you don't make this distinction very clearly with every one of your thoughts, then you're always lost in fantasies. You're always caught up in the movie, in the drama of the movie. You don't see that the movie's just light on a screen. What if who you believe you are, this perceiver that we think you are, what if that was a thought and not reality? Now, what does that mean? Remember, we made a distinction here. So when we say that, yes, there's a certain feeling to the thought of you, but what you believe you are is not that feeling. What you believe you are is you believe you're the story that that feeling portrays, so to speak, which is a fiction. Could that be possible? Could you, as an entity, actually be a fiction? Huh. Interesting. Very significant, huh? Very significant distinction. So keep that one in mind, because we're going to go on to the second one. Second distinction is also extremely important. And this is that reality is only what is happening right now in the present moment. This is a very powerful distinction. What I'm saying here is that if you don't see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, think it, right now, like right fucking now, not a minute ago, or not what you think is going to happen tomorrow, but like right fucking now, then it's not real. It's what? It's a story, it's a movie that you've been sucked into. That's what it actually is. Now, this is a bold claim that I'm making, and perhaps you're going to want proof of this, which I'll address here in a second. But do you realize how significant this is, what I'm stating? I mean, literally, that right now, if you're looking at me and you're watching this and you're listening, if your parents are not in front of you, then they are literally not real. If right now you cannot hear, feel, smell, taste your parents, they're not real. I'm also saying that your car, unless you're sitting in it or you're looking at it, is not real. It does not exist in consciousness, which means it is not a part of reality. It also means that yesterday, all the stuff that happened to you yesterday that feels so real, that's not real either. That's a movie that you believe is real, but you're not seeing it for what it really is, which is just some light projected on a screen. And very curiously, your brain isn't real. Can you see your brain right now? Can you hear it? Can you feel it? Can you taste it? Can you smell it? What do you actually have of your brain? You have a movie of it, you have a thought of it, but that's it. In fact, notice that you've never in your entire life, unless you've had open brain surgery with a mirror looking at your brain, you've never seen your brain. So as far as you're concerned, the brain is a fiction. These are just some of the ramifications of what I'm saying, so you can start to see how significant this statement is, that only what's happening right now and what is happening in your senses is real. Now, what's going to happen is that your voice is going to object to this. The voice, it'll come in there and say, well, Leo, hold on a second. But it's the scientist tells us this and science tells us that. And then we got other ideas here and we got religious ideas here. And I mean, What about, are you saying like when I'm not looking at the sun doesn't exist? When I turn my head away, the things behind me don't exist anymore? What are you saying exactly? The voice will say all this stuff. Again, what's actually happening there? When the voice is talking, remember, we've already made this distinction. What is real about the voice and what is the fiction? What is the content? So notice that when you start getting sucked into those different objections, what's happening is that you're getting sucked into the content of thought again. So what happens is that basically thoughts come up and then you start to open your mind to some new possibility. And what happens immediately, a new thought comes up and covers that opening and just pummels you with more content. And you just keep getting pummeled with more and more content. As though, imagine you're sitting at the movie and you've been at the movies your entire life. So you can't distinguish between reality and movie. So you've been watching movies chained to your chair your entire life. You grew up that way. And then when someone tells you that, wait a minute, you're just watching a movie, it's just light on a screen, it's not real. And then you start to say, oh, well, maybe that's possible. And your mind opens up a little bit, right? And then what happens? Immediately you get pummeled with more content, right? It's not like your mind just opens and now you can see the illusion. No, the movie keeps playing and you see some, scary monster jump up and you're like, shit, it's a scary monster. It's so real. And you forget about the fact that your mind was just starting to open and your mind closes back up. And that's exactly what's happening all the time in this enlightenment work, is your mind opens up and then it gets just bombarded with content. And you forget that the content is not real, it's a fiction. So it's an extremely self-propagating illusion here. And you need to have enough awareness to start to see what's going on. So you need to be able to go meta. So when these objections of your voice pop up, as though they're pointed towards me, questioning my theory or whatever you want to call it, my philosophy, then you need to see what that is. You need to apply the things you learned here. Otherwise, you're going to fall back asleep. And no one can help you with that but yourself. I can't help you with that. So, I'm not going to go in here and say that this is the absolute truth, that reality is only what you hear right now. I'm just saying that that's a principle, a general guideline that I want you to follow in this work. Because if you don't follow this principle, you're going to waste literally hundreds, if not thousands of your hours, precious hours, running in circles in your mind, getting absolutely nowhere. This is how people can take 40 years to become enlightened, is because they've been running in circles, getting pummeled with content, buying into the content, not going meta, not seeing what the content actually is in reality, getting sucked in and tricked by their voice. That's how it happens. So I really encourage you to take this distinction of reality is only what's happening right now in my senses and run with it. Use that principle until it breaks. It'll break your mind. It'll break your sense of self. You can use this one principle to get to full enlightenment. If you just sit there and you actually start to sort out what's real from what's not real by applying this principle, you can get to full enlightenment. But that will take a very special dedication on your part to do that. Not easy. So those are two distinctions. Now what I want to do is I want to wrap up with some tips. I want to give you some tips for avoiding some of the most common traps that people fall into in this work. And the reason that I know these is probably because I've fallen into most of them myself many, many times. All right, so here we go. Do not take any idea or framework or belief as the truth. And when I'm talking about truth in this context of enlightenment, I mean like the truth with a capital T. I mean like existential metaphysical truth. Now, science tells us that such truth is not possible to come by. This work is telling you that it is. Is it really? Be open to the possibility. Because if you're not open, then you are not doing the process. Any idea or framework or belief at all is not absolute truth. Why not? Because it's that movie. It's not the reality. Light shining on the screen. Also, don't take any instruction as the truth, including my instruction. So when I'm here telling you stuff, this is just to make you aware that you're in the matrix. That's all it is. It's like me handing you a little secret note that says, hey, buddy, you're in the fucking matrix. Wake the fuck up. That little note is still in the fucking matrix. The note is not you getting outside the matrix. Don't make that mistake. Very deadly mistake. Everything I tell you here is not the truth with capital T. Its only value to you is if it helps you to discover that truth for yourself. That truth can only be discovered by you, by no one else. Also, forget about all scientific explanations. They will not help you here. They will hurt you. They will slow you down. Forget about the Big Bang Theory. Forget about string theory. Forget about quarks and atoms and molecules and chemistry and evolutionary theory and all this stuff that you've learned. Forget about all that. Doesn't matter. I don't care what quantum mechanics says. Irrelevant. You have no understanding of quantum mechanics anyways. Also, forget about all religious explanations. If you're the religious or spiritual sort, drop all that shit. Forget about God, forget about the soul, forget about spirits, forget about heaven and hell, forget about energy, forget about love, forget about all that nonsense. Those are more ideas, more beliefs, which are slowing you down. Also, very importantly, if you're like a more advanced student of this work and you kind of know what enlightenment is, and you're like, oh, well, enlightenment is nothingness. And it's everything, and I'm this, and I'm that, and oh, I've studied so much of this enlightenment stuff. I know what you're talking about, Leo. No, you don't. Unless you're enlightened, you really don't know what you're talking about. So forget about nothingness. You think you know what nothingness is? You have no fucking idea what it is. If you did, you would be enlightened. We wouldn't be having this conversation. By the way, I apply all this to myself. Do you understand this? So I'm not here like preaching this at you as though like, haha, I'm better than you. No, these are all traps that I fall into every single day that I struggle with, right? So I get caught by all these traps. Don't think I'm like above you somewhere. I'm not. I especially get caught with the trap of nothingness because I spent so much time learning and studying enlightenment that now I think I know everything about enlightenment. And I know that actually I don't know anything about enlightenment. How's that for some paradox? So whatever idea you have of nothingness that you're trying to get yourself towards, stop that. That's not nothingness. That's slowing you down. That's illusion. You need to see that as more stories, more movies. The biggest trap here is that people try to conceptualize enlightenment. They try to conceptualize themselves. This is not possible. Every and any belief or idea that you have is not the truth with capital T. Will not work. You cannot think your way into enlightenment, nor can you think your way out of enlightenment. But that's the only way you know how to do enlightenment work. That's the only thing you really recognize as real. That's the only way you solve problems, is trying to think your way out of them or thinking your way into something else. Can't do that here. Here's an analogy that I like. You're basically like a dog trying to learn calculus. A dog cannot learn calculus. Why not? Because it doesn't have the high conceptual abilities to conceptualize the different ideas that are necessary to do calculus. It doesn't have that abstract thinking faculty. So try as it might, if the dog just keeps doing its dog stuff, like wagging its tail and chasing around and eating food and scratching its nuts, if it keeps doing all that, will it ever learn calculus? No, it won't. Analogously, you're like that dog, scratching its nuts. That's what you're doing when you're thinking about stuff. That's the only thing you know you can do. You don't even know that there's anything else outside of that. You don't even have a fucking clue that there's some calculus out there that could be learned. So then how do you advance past this? Well, you have to not think your way out. You can't get yourself to calculus by scratching more of your nuts. That's not going to work. You have to raise awareness. You raise awareness by looking and observing, not by thinking. That's why we made that critical distinction between looking and thinking. You got to really hold yourself to that. Otherwise, you're just going to be scratching your nuts. Remember that this work takes massive persistence. So when you sit down, you're doing this process, you're going to very likely get disheartened many, many times and quit many, many times and quit and come back and this and that. There's going to be a lot of drama and problems and emotions will come up and you'll have existential crises and you'll get depressed and angry and pissed off and jealous and you'll say that a Leo is stupid and fuck all this enlightenment bullshit and you'll come up with every scenario in the book. This work takes massive persistence, like on a scale that you have not thought you are capable of as a human being. What's required here of your mind is extraordinary. Right? You need to sit down and look at who you really are thousands of times, and you will fail thousands of times, guaranteed. And you need to be able to fail thousands of times and still persevere. And every time, refine your approach and do it better and better and better and better. And even if you're doing it all perfectly, you're still going to fail many, many times. And in the end, what will happen is that you will get rewarded with your persistence. And if you're doing everything right, then what will happen is at some point, and you can't predict when or why or how, what will happen is there will be a spontaneous awakening. This is enlightenment. The spontaneous awakening happens. It happens by fluke luck. You break through. Really, you did not use any process to get there. Although, if you use this process that I told you, your results will be, the probability of your results will be greatly increased. So, you have this spontaneous awakening, and then what happens is that you become actually what you are. You're not thinking about who you are. You're not philosophizing. You're not theorizing or believing some theory or whatever. You actually are it. Absolutely. You're not even a perceiver of it, because actually there are no perceivers. There just is reality as it exists. There's only being. So what happens is that you become being, and this being is not limited or located in any particular coordinate in space. So it's not like you're sitting behind the brain somewhere. Actually, what happens is that the you that you think is behind the brain there, it expands to everywhere. It has no location. It can be anywhere. Also, have you noticed, by the way, that thoughts have no location? Check it out in your awareness one time when you sit down. Thoughts are not located anywhere. So what will happen is that you will just become reality, and that will be the enlightenment. And you'll have some good times. And what will happen is then you'll fall back asleep. And then you'll go and you'll pursue some more enlightenments, then you'll fall back asleep. And then you'll pursue some more enlightenments and you'll fall back asleep. But, even if you can crack that first nut, that'll be very, very eye-opening for you. It'll be life-changing for you. It'll be something that you never imagined was possible. It'll be something that you literally cannot conceive with your imagination. And it'll be extremely powerful in the ramifications that it has on your life. But also at the same time subtle. Subtle. And when you look back on it, you'll be very grateful that you did this work. Because once you break out of the matrix, you never want to go back in. And you're always very grateful for all the work you did, even though it was hell, all the work you did to break out. Right? It'll be very, very worth it. But it's hard for you to conceive right now what I'm talking about. So that's it. You will get lost a lot on this journey. So what I recommend is that you stick around for more of the videos that I'm going to have coming. Really, this video, if you think this video is long, I could keep talking for another 3 or 4 hours just to help you to make some more distinctions, just right here, just with this little piece of it right here. and help you to understand how to do it right. But I want you to go get some practical experience. Go apply this right now in your life. Do it consistently. Try to get a consistent habit of it going. And then stick around for future videos because I'm going to be breaking down other facets of this work, different traps you're going to be falling into. There's a lot to talk about. So a lot of good stuff coming that I'm really excited about. Very advanced topics, right? Even more advanced than this. Remember that this is not philosophy. This is not philosophy. So stop fucking around. Stop your objections, stop your excuses. You know, if you want, you can do all that, but that's going to cost you thousands of hours of time. So if you want to play devil's advocate and your little funny remarks and all this and ha ha ha, yeah, go do that. But you're not making any progress. If you want to make real quick progress here, and this is something you can do, is stop raising all the objections in your mind. Stop clinging to all the different beliefs that you have. Because every belief you cling to, that's not the truth. So in practice, what this work really becomes, it becomes a process of dismissing a bunch of your beliefs first before you can actually sit down and do real enlightenment work. I mean, I probably spent 6, if not 10 months just clearing out the bullshit in my mind before I could really get some just 5 minutes here or 10 minutes here of like really laser focused looking awareness at what I could be. And I still haven't cracked it yet, right? But I've made a lot of progress. What you're going to notice in this work is that, you know, when you first start, it's going to seem like it's so vague and what the fuck is Leo talking about? And like, this is so stupid. It makes no sense. What am I doing? But something in you knows that there's a nugget of truth here, so you pursue it. And then what happens is you start to have these aha moments where you realize that, oh shit, I've been going down this trap for a week, and I've been going down that trap for 3 months. And it's like, oh fuck. And then you put yourself back on track. And sometimes you'll get disgusted and you'll get depressed and whatever, and you'll quit. Then you'll come back a couple months later. You'll lose a couple months that way. But you know, better than never coming back. And so what happens though also is that you have all these objections about, well, but reality should be this way. And, you know, religion told me that. And what about God? And what about the soul? And, you know, but science says this and the Big Bang Theory said that. That's dozens of hours right there for each one of those of running around, licking your nuts in your mind. That's what you're doing. So I encourage you to cut that shit out if you can. And if you can't, then fuck, go work through it. Work through it. It'll take you thousands of hours, work through it. It'll be worth it. Even then, even if you're the slowest, worst person at this, it'll be worth it. Very worth it. As hard as this is, the value of it is greater to you than the difficulty. And lastly, just remember that everything that you have been told here is not the truth. All right, I'm done. Post me your comments down below. Click the like button, please. Share this video with a friend who is very open-minded. Don't share this with closed-minded people. And then come sign up to my newsletter right here at Actualized.org. It's a free newsletter. I release new videos every single week on self-actualization topics, but also some enlightenment topics. As I continue forward with Actualized.org, we're going to be covering more and more very nuanced, very deep, very advanced topics. So in order for you even to start to understand those, you need to start to do some of this enlightenment work, as I call it. So go start doing it and then subscribe and stick around for more, which will be coming up in the future because I'm always releasing new content. See you soon.